at you. Oh, the yellow.
Oh yeah, this is the Florida house.
Oh, okay. Where in Florida? Is it a secret?
Um, we're in between Vero Beach and Fort Pierce on the East Coast. It's about 55 miles north of West Palm Beach.
Okay, so is that like kind of near like Butler Beach? St. Augustine-ish?
I don't think so. It's about 100 miles north or yeah, southeast of Orlando, over
Oh,
close to
100 miles
Detroit.
southeast of Orlando.
Yeah, and down from the Space Coast from Cape Canaveral. Yeah,
Oh, wow. So you get to see like the SpaceX launches?
yeah, from the backyard you can see them go up.
Oh my gosh, it's so surreal to me.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I've seen several go up. The last one, believe it or not, I missed. Bonnie Rickard, who used to practice law with us, her son Braden, who graduated from University of Alabama. He came when she came with us. He was like 12. He was involved in the mathematics and all that stuff on that. So he was part of that team.
We have Great Pyrenees now. Pledge Lee, come here. Pledge. Pledge is singing a song for us, but it's not funny. Come here.
I hear you.
She's huge. I have one photo of her. Well, actually now I have like four. Pledge, come here. She usually is much more polite when I sit down at the desk. Her brother's laying next to me and holds beautiful space. She can be a little more, come here, come say hi to Margo.
Oh, hi. I think I saw a picture of her on Facebook.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, she's gorgeous. I'm going to just turn the lighting just a tad, and then I know that there's probably questions about what the heck we're doing right now in the here and now.
Yes.
Hang
That's
on.
fine.
Back.
Okay. So tell me what you've been doing since you left the area.
Well, oh gosh. So 20 years ago, right? Because I was 21 when I met you, and I'm 40 years of life now.
All right.
Yeah. So 19. Okay, so let's do the math. 19. Because it was 2005 when we met. And then summer 2006, I made the most difficult decision to leave behind that magnificent community that I felt so anchored in, which you were such a vital part of. And you held such beautiful space for me then, and now I can feel it. Basically, I've been doing a slow climb toward integrating, Pilates is known as intelligent exercise. So integrating the physical with the mental ambitions. I was writing a lot at that time. I was traveling around the world, writing a lot. Um, you know, Greece. And I don't know if you remember, but I was dating a guy who was super controlling, who would,
Yeah,
you remember that?
I think so. Yeah.
And I remember like one time he came by the studio and like brought roses, and I was just like, oh my gosh, because he never accepted me and my need to express myself in a creative way and write. Any time away from him was like, no. And
Yeah.
so I took the high road, and I just felt like I also really wanted to study yoga. So I went to Vancouver, and so I left there in the name of studying yoga. And I lived in Vancouver for 8.5 years because I'm a dually technically.
Oh,
And yeah, my dad was born and raised in Montreal. He was born in 1915, so he was a World War II veteran. And so I've gotten heavily entrenched in just between my upbringing and then oddly attracting a lot of stories around people's experiences that are transitioning service members. And so now in this whole integrative work that I'm doing in the last 2 years of my undergrad, with my health sciences degree, I developed a psychological self-assessment tool that I'm still in the midst of doing. And this is part of that, in that, so I'm building this work. It's for wellness centers like I met you at, and then corporate wellness offerings. So corporations are more in tune now and wanting to have that EQ honed in on, emotional intelligence. And then for nonprofits that are centered around just human empowerment and human development. So after 8.5 years in Canada, so I sold my car. Like, I had a lovely, like a Freelander Range Rover when I knew you. I sold the car. It helped me to pay for my yoga teacher training. Didn't have a car for 7 years.
Wow.
And then I finally got one. Yeah, because it's like New York. You don't really need a car in Vancouver because you have the nicety of really clean public transit, unlike New York City. It's very clean and it's very connective. So I facilitate, I mean, you guys broke me in. I always talk about the powerhouse women who broke me in, who, when I was 21, I went and taught at this little space in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, off of Dixie Highway, with these women who just kind of looked at me as a 21-year-old and went, ha, whatever, I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say. Because I was new, and it was like a difficult transition for y'all too, probably. Like, I don't know who I was replacing, but it was a real down home space where everybody was accustomed to one another, everyone knew one another. Jules was freaking powerhouse. I am forever grateful for the space she held in, like, I was just fresh out of it. So I was very serious. And so I thought everybody should be doing all the exercises. Do you remember that part when I first
Yeah,
started?
but it really helped. I mean, it really helped us. I mean, Patsy Summy and I, we're still dear friends. She's on the bench.
Oh,
She's still the judge now. Um, we just, yeah, we loved it. And that was a wonderful thing for us to do at that age. Cause 20 years ago, I was, 51. So
right. Oh my
yeah.
goodness. Wow, you're just a little bit older than I am now.
Oh
Wild.
yeah.
Well, you know what I have I started a one-bedroom apartment. What I have in the middle of my living room is a Pilates reformer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So it's the consistency that's generally the challenge of life.
Yeah. I mean, I just did free weights. So I've got into weights because I really need to have the dynamism of engagement of self and all the different capacities, physical, mental, all the different parts of self.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I'm like, reformer. I mean, just to have the presence of that, it reignites my intention to always stay tuned in to that, because it's contrology exercise. So it helps us to just initiate everything from our deepest core, our center. And it reminds us that all those other movements always start from here. And that prevents injury no matter how many years of life we are. What are you doing now?
Well, I am after we left the Pilates studio, I went to Moda Yoga hot yoga for a number of years.
Hmm.
And then I was really actually I did the May challenge of 30 days hot yoga. They had a May challenge, so it was like you had to do it for 30 days, which was really wonderful. So I did that several times, and then I hopped off a motorcycle that was going to take me down and pulled my groin muscle, and I was like, this ain't no funny feeling. So I had never had that happen. I was trying to think at about 60, I was running up and down the Dixie Heights High School football field on a what you call it boot camp in the morning,
Oh my goodness.
and I did that for a while, and then I have just consistent, and then lately, I mean, I haven't done anything consistent with any lessons or anything like that. I just do I walk. I did some hiking in the fall. I bike when I'm down here. I bike. I ended up with a plantar fasciitis bullshit, and that hurts like hell. So then I started biking. So I do, 5 or 7 miles down here in Florida. I walk at least 2 miles to 3 miles, 1 or 2 times a week. I mean, I'm consistent in exercising, but just not formally. And I do need to do yoga now because I've had certain, back. I got my back is killing me right now, but it's not keeping me from working. I mean, I've been moving from this house to, I bought the house next door, so I'll have a house for rent.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and so
Congratulations.
I've been carrying shit back and forth, and it's about breaking my back.
Well, I will, if you're interested, I'll send you the channel. I recorded 9 TCY, which layman's term, take care of yourself yoga. But
Oh,
TCY, trauma cooperative yoga. The more fun, wide sweeping terminology now is yoga soothe. So it's just a lot of practical self application in the posture so that it's connective. It's less about being austere, like so perfectionistic. It's about more connecting with where you are in your body and doing hands-on self-contact, self-soothing.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I always exercise. So I look back on my life at this point because it's been 50 years since I was 21. Um, I've always been exercising athlete in that, so that's a good thing because
Yeah.
now it's paying off. Because I look at my comparative to my sister who still smokes a little bit, and
Oh God.
she's 2 years younger than me, and I can just there's a big difference in our activity levels. And then I also began a meditation with a group out of Maine. It's called Sacred Tides, and we I meet with them on Wednesday. But I've been through a couple different classes. Of course, after I did the yoga, I did the Enneagram. I got to be a certified life coach in the Enneagram out of the Conscious Living Center in Cincinnati. So I've
Oh,
always kind of had the web of spirituality, connectiveness to the body and stuff. So when I was, I just watched you and I was watching what you were doing. And I thought, and even the traumatic thing that you're doing with military is really critical because I've had a bunch of divorces where the husband comes back and the wife is like, "Who are you?"
yeah,
And they're just like completely different people. So,
it is.
yeah.
And it's really different. I think it's equally, if not more, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but traumatic for the spouse, but whatever gender, but the spouse,
Yeah.
who is on the receiving end, because a lot of us, I'm sure we try exponentially to turn things around like I did. And in that, friendship is always key in any relationship, no matter what the nature of it is. So I've been able to have respite from like feeling forlorn about the whole experience and feeling like guilty of it not working. Women are really, we can be good at blaming ourselves, so can men. I think it's just a human trait, especially
Hmm.
when we feel so powerless in a situation. It's because there's that self-preservation, that self-care, and I'm steeped in that lineage of knowing how to care for ourselves and studying that and developing techniques to do that. So how would I be? I think if I look at it, and I'd be more of a hypocrite if I didn't I adhere to my own truths like I really believed that I needed to do, in context to this whole situation of leaving the marriage, and then yet being able to hold space as a friend and divine friendship, holding space, helping him um, put everything back together in his life, from work after the military to having an honorable discharge thanks to the military lawyer who is working to decriminalize mental health in the military.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I mean, the depression hit him hard with the divorce. And in a corporate world, you just don't get a paycheck. In the military world, you're down underground in a brig with one tiny window at the top alone for a month, pulling your fingernails out. I mean, that's the kind of, it's asinine, like to not to have an intervention that's healthier minded. And so yesterday I presented with a therapist who's worked with special forces for over 12 years, the military version of this work. And it's a huge body of work. And then this one, the one that I want to practice with you is civilian, because unless, do you know, well, we'll do the civilian just because I need practice anyway for the
Okay.
wellness development, for the corporate offerings. I want this to be more universal, the nonprofit sector, for human development, human empowerment. I had a 501c3 myself from 2016 to 2019. When I dissolved it in Sacramento. So it's huge. Like I just want to introduce you again, Margo Grubbs, the fact that you're here. You held space for me 20 years ago. And it was in this capacity of where, like you said, we all benefited from it. We were all kind of growing at the same time, me and like learning how to facilitate with people who are powerhouses, who are, you're accustomed to telling people what's going to happen next. And then you have this person who's like, no, now you could just kick your heels up and I'm going to take over everything here. It's like, excuse me, Missy, being raised by World War II veteran father, my parents were always having dinner parties. And like, I was always sitting and listening to these people who had eons, decades and decades and decades and decades. They weren't young parents. I was listening to these thoughtful conversations over our dinners. And I guess I never felt as intimidated as I should of people who are my superiors. I would never last in the military. That would be deafening to my self-development.
Yeah, I don't take kindly to people telling me what to do. That's a problem.
Right. Yes. I love the reward. You've gotten an award. What was the most recent award you got for your work?
Oh, that Distinguished Lawyer of Northern Kentucky Bar Association. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
I had to give a speech, and so the
How long was
decision
it? In minutes.
Well, it was only supposed to be about 10 to 12, 15 minutes, something like that. But the decision for me was it am I going to blow smoke up the ass of these people, or am I going to tell them the truth?
Mm-hmm.
And I decided I have to tell them the truth because it might be my only opportunity. So it was like, and there were a lot of young women lawyers there. And so I basically just said, you all probably don't remember this, but when I got married at age 16 and had a baby at 17, I did not have the ability to get a credit card or a loan or anything because I had to have my husband sign or my daddy sign because I was a woman. And then I just kind of proceeded to explain how those kinds of barriers really put us women who wanted to achieve and wanted to succeed and wanted to help others and be service to others. We just had to hop over barrier after barrier after barrier through the course of the 70s, and then how the law developed in relationship to that. And, and also that I told them too, I said, I had an opportunity to be a judge, but when it came to the political realm, there was no way they were going to put, an LGBTQ person on the bench against a right-wing religious crazy that was going to challenge a congressional race. It wasn't even a race I was involved in. It just had to be a man that knew me since I was 8 years old, had seen my struggle, knew I was the deserving judge candidate, but I wasn't going to get it. And I didn't. So I just kind of laid it out for him. And then I also began to talk to him about the dilemmas that we're facing right now with the rule of law and the challenge against democracy. And I mean, believe it or not, I got a standing ovation. There was like 300 or 400 people there. It was unbelievable to me, but I just told him the truth.
Where was
it's a brand new venue down. You haven't been home for a while, but down in
we have
Madison. Okay, Madison Avenue, where the Covington Hotel is.
Yeah.
The old YMCA is now a big reception area.
Okay.
And that's where it was. It was a huge.
Oh,
it was
wow.
Beautiful.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
So it was a big deal.
So my family friend of 22 years, he has been plugging away. I guess he's about 71 now too, at his real estate business, and it finally paid off. And him and his partner Taylor were able to buy a couple of horses, and they live in Indian Hill. So I go when I visit, I'm on the other side of the bridge, but no place sings like home to my heart than Fort Mitchell, Kentucky. I'll just go there sometimes just to have fish and chips at the pub there.
Yeah.
That really good pub. They have the peas and the fish and chips.
Oh, is that it? You mean it's a saddle club?
It's near Barnes and Nobles. So
yeah, up there, Crestview Mall.
Like past where we used to work out on the left.
Yeah, yeah.
If we're passing and it's on the left. I actually went to the old stomping grounds a few times just to check it out. And I noticed there was a big tire out there. So it's like CrossFit or something now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's been some changes in that area, but
Yeah.
you know, our area keeps growing, and I sold all of my Covington property. I owned like 13 rental units, mixed use, and I got rid of all of it. And then we rent space in Fort Mitchell in the Huff building right off Buttermilk Pike. And I
Nice.
have a nice young woman, lawyer partner. She's been with me 15 years. My paralegal's been with me 14 years. And I'm at the other end now where I'm just coming and going and doing as I please.
Wow. Wow. And you bought the
Yeah.
house next door there in Florida, you mentioned. And so
Oh
you've been
yeah, that
dating.
these are mobile. These are like manufactured homes, but I mean, and you have
Oh,
to and you rent the
is it a
land.
tiny house?
Yeah, I'll
Or
show
is
you.
it okay?
Now
Because you know
this is
those houses that are like modular. Oh, I love the colors. This reminds me of my mom's house.
that's the house I got.
Oh, down. You gotta go further down. I'm looking at the roof still. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Your
can you
yard. That's
see
your
how pretty it is today?
daddy's out there. It is so pretty. Are you gonna
And
rent
then
it?
this
Or are
and
you
then this is it.
gonna
I'm gonna rent this one. I moved into that one over there. And then this is the one
Oh,
this was the one that I'm getting ready to show a renter on Friday. So
aha. You know
it's
I
been a
love
lot
the
of work.
yellow. You know I love the yellow. You know that's the first thing that's getting my attention. Oh, yellow is my
Yeah,
favorite color, and like a moss green.
yeah.
Okay, hang loose with me for 1 second. I'm gonna hit share screen, and then because I know I readily have the here it is. Nope, that's for everyone still. Bum, ba, bum, ba, bum, ba, bum. Well, maybe it just didn't like that there we go. Ha! More
Wow.
yellow.
Yeah, beautiful.
Do you want to read it back and forth? So I just want you to experience this so that I get real-time feedback. Like
Okay.
it's wellness, it's a psychological self-assessment tool, and it's the body of work. And eventually I want to speak on this on the stage. Last time I spoke to 300, 400 people was at a funeral. So
Yeah.
your most recent, that was a long time ago. So I can laugh about it now, because I know that he rests in peace. Beautiful Lane. Okay, so unifying you, identity associations, who are we? So the I am identity association model. Do you want to take over and we'll go back and forth and see how much we can
You
process?
mean you want me to read that? Sure.
Take turns with me.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
Um,
you.
that's fine. Can we define ourselves from the outside in? How much do we identify with our physical selves as being who we are? What about with our looks, sexuality, career or jobs we show up to? Where we go to school, our choices, family, the person, people we love, our geography, our physical health, race, and or gender.
Can we define ourselves from the inside happenings of our lives? So our multiplicity of thoughts, our ever-changing state of mind, our speech, what we actively reflect on, what we contemplate, our transient feelings, what we believe, our general disposition, our personality, ideas, conversations, choices, or by our determinations.
As we see from these starter lists, sometimes we just cannot define ourselves from the outside in or from the inside out, at least not as an all embracing definition of who we are.
Beingness is organic, Margo. Questions? Open.
No, I'm trying to
We're
absorb
always
what we're
here.
talking about. Yeah.
Okay, good. I know. And so anything like honestly, I love transparency. So any open-ended, closed questions that come to mind, I love it. What
Okay.
is visible to the human eye is only the beginning of who we are. But what people see is a byproduct of one common thread, an affecting force between the inside and outside worlds, our choices.
Our choices live inside us and they express themselves outside of us. They are the most transient part of who we are, constantly shifting, liberating, or confining us.
The greatest choice we'll ever make is not buying a house, choosing our next makeover, or even the partner to wed, or what workout or diet regime you stick to. It is defining who we are and who we will be and become moment to moment.
And that's where the identity association model comes into play.
The identity association model is designed to support us in the instances when we're needing to not only remember who we are, but also how to connect to the most chosen, prominent impression of ourselves in our own minds. The I am helps us to navigate the self we desire to step into.
However, we cannot navigate until we are willing to express. Firstly, though, we must be aware of what we are expressing within ourselves. As we willfully navigate our decided upon state of being, we begin to unfold and observe actualities and realities.
So creating life from the inside out with the help of this tool. So the act of self-expression is a test tube of courage, where we give ourselves a chance to live into our possibilities in the present moment. So like Margo was saying, that act of self-expression of saying, am I going to blow smoke up the ass of this crowd, or am I going to be honest about what these people are actually facing in terms of representing the law?
At the end of the day, I believe we are how we meet the world, not necessarily what we do to meet the world, such as job title or who introduced who. Certainly not when we decide to enter a long desired relationship of the nature we want, or why we enter into career or academia.
Any comments? Don't feel pressured.
Yeah, this takes a lot of thought when you are absorbing the context of the content. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Because I can say from me, yeah, in the Enneagram, I'm a 3. Okay. So I'm a doer.
Okay.
And I'm motivated by doing, succeeding, failure's not an option, all of those things. So I meet the world as who I am, as not only a 3, but a lot of times an attorney.
Right. Yeah.
It's a place of being. And so as I have been trying to learn to be more centered and accepting of what you said, like for instance, friendliness. I mean, I'm not the most warm and fuzzy person in the world at all. And probably, and the person you know, yeah, the person the person you knew and met, because we were all on a for instance, Patsy and I think, I can't remember which, Kathy, I think, went with us. We were being taught and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. And we were old and you were young chickadee. We listened and kind of became more intimate in our bantering. Whereas if you're presenting yourself normally with people you don't know very well, you're going to be
Guarded. More
you're not going to be who you are, because my generation has been taught that who you are really is a vulnerability that someone will exploit and attack you and they'll hurt you. And that is not a funny feeling.
And there's still people who adhere to that. And that's why I think for me, part of resiliency means expanding my roots widely, because where there's always going to be a menace, there's also going to be an advocate. And so be it. Let people say and speak. And you know that. You've had to encounter that determination within yourself that I am who I am, and this is who I'm being. So at the end of the day, I hear you. It's dancing that fine line for sure. And I think my practice, because of yoga and having lived in a monastery in Vancouver, and the big cornerstone of yoga on and off of the mat is self-study. That I'm prolifically committed to self-study. It makes me, as is said, imperfectly perfect. At least I know that my because this is about resiliency. This is about being able to shift within ourselves in a way that helps us to move forward whatever self-determination we're making about ourselves in any given moment.
Right. I took on the devotional reading of Richard Rohr this year, and the approach for this year was called radical resilience. Because it's sort of like self-study is one thing, but if you can't share the knowledge that you've learned about self-study in order to effectuate the change and service to others, it's the problem. It's a real big problem. And
how integrated. That's a lack of interpersonal effectiveness. Like if we just store all this knowledge and then act holier than thou, what the hell, like you're saying, is the point? I mean, how does that create a ripple effect and actually create the change that we were personally seeking? So be that personal in the quote unquote impersonal that you were talking about. It's demanding roles that says, like, shelf who you are.
So I saw you're working on your master's degree, which will give you the counseling component. The issue that I see as a broad-based concern, I am absorbed with this attack on our democracy right now. I mean, literally, it's just controls my mind the majority of my waking day, because it is so critical. And here we are once again in a position of not getting the information to the masses. And we're not getting the information to the masses because we are being exploited by propaganda that is just, oh my God. I mean, it's worse than Tokyo Rose and Hanoi Hannah. I mean, that used to be where Tokyo Rose was a radio broadcast in World War II that literally she spoke to the servicemen in a seductive female femme fatale way about how they're losing the war. I mean, it literally was a big shit deal back then. Now we have these devices that we're all addicted to. And we are seeing stuff.
Millions of duchesses.
Yeah, I mean, it's from within. So it's like this kind of stuff that you're talking about is like, how do we get to the within if you're not going to be focused and understand it? And it's just, I mean, Joe, I've been around a long time.
Well, that's placing the external before the internal again. Like, how do we get within if we're assuming incongruence between self and the world? And we know that with the billions and billions of people, there's enough people on our side to be whoever the fuck we want to be.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
I love the introduction of Tokyo Rose. Oh, that was interesting. I'm going to totally.
Yeah. And Hanoi Hannah. They were the two propaganda femme fatales.
Okay. Wow.
In the Vietnam War. Yeah.
Breaking
Hanoi
ice.
Hannah.
On behalf of American service members?
They were trying to break the spirit of American service members.
Oh, no kidding. No. Oh, no. Oh.
Yeah, that's what they call. I mean, that was the propaganda machine that Japan had during World War II, and the propaganda machine that North Vietnam had over in Vietnam on the radios. See, that's all they had back then were radios.
Oh my God. Whoa. Yeah.
And now we got Facebook that is run by a Russian farm field, putting out shit that's not even true. Fake, what are those AI fake, deep state fakes, or whatever in the hell they call them. You know, people they're not even real people.
I mean, it takes such courage to show up as a real person online, because it can be manufactured, remanufactured, reeled, and all the different manifestations and everything. Choosing how we meet the world is especially crucial during great turmoil, change, or a mixture of the two. So personal, interpersonal work here.
Yet through more deeply living into each facet of ourselves, we churn out a more realized self who is more all around competent in self expression and self navigation. Practice makes practice is relevant in IAM.
Identity association model. We do not live to be perfect people. We live to become more effective and easeful people, I hope, in our lives. So there's a saying, and I will have to see who says this, but the ego is addicted to problems, spirit is dedicated to solutions. So we think about that, and we put that in a microcosmic world of our inner self. When we fixate on a problematic circumstances day in and day out, it's like, well, why would I be doing this? So some of this material speaks to that. In order to further our total life mission, whatever that is, specific to our personal and professional paths.
Whether our personal path is getting through the day after a unique catastrophic, such as raising a family, catastrophe such as raising a family, getting into a dream college, navigating a new country, or returning to what feels like a new country. Whether our personal path is getting through the day after a unique catastrophe such as raising. Yeah. So let me ask you a question on this PowerPoint that you've got. What do you use it for?
This is actually part of the map for the book that's being written. And also these testing grounds that we're on right now, this experiential component of being here together and being in this work together and seeing what comes up for people is fuel for me to further realize the depths or lack thereof, if it's missing spaces, if it's wholly anywhere, and being able to translate my findings into being able to present to this on a stage. My desire is to share this in the capacity of a stage, which we'll learn more about in a second, but why that would even be at the forefront of my mind. This was you. We need to choose who we are and remember that what people can see of us is only a fraction of who we will become, so long as we continue to invest healthily and wisely into our inward selves.
We live in a society that wants to tell us who we are based on our upbringing, looks, and immediate concrete abilities.
What we really need to do is unstoppingly use our inner lives for the improvement of ourselves in the direction that we actually want to go to.
Overly fixating on the buzzword of the century, trauma, only compounds the intensity of the otherwise navigable situations in our lives. Suddenly, moving from one place in our lives to the next feels almost unbearable. And therefore, transcendence of the situation oftentimes becomes unlikely. Let me just say this to you. I read that, I understand what the words mean. My inner being will not allow me to even acknowledge on a emotional level I have been traumatized.
That's it. That's why the word trauma is complacent in the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a funeral home. I was around death as a child every single day. My mother was not kind. She was an authoritarian, and she didn't even know how to handle her own shit, much less ours. But she was a loving mother in mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Washed, cleaned, food.
Well said.
But not hugging, loving.
Right.
So the trauma, I mean, it's just like a foreign thing to me. I don't want that trauma.
The trauma is, if I may insert, being denied being seen, being denied visibility. That is a form of, and like everybody's coming from our best version of self. So we learn from our ancestors.
Mhm.
And they might be in the ether watching over and teaching us what they did wrong with loving hands from the unseen. Like they might be kind of guiding us in that, I can see where I fell short. And here's for your next self-realization. Here's your soul work, your spirit work, if you will. So my grandmother was super militant. I don't know anything about her parents. I only met one grandparent of four. And God bless her heart. I mean, she must have been so masterful in the material world, in the worldly world, of manifesting, working for more than a decade at the head of all duties in Alan Shepard's office. I mean, we're returning to space again and space topics. I mean, holy moly, cool. Respect. And that said, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but that silence, and that said, that silence is what stymies forward progress. So knowing that no one's alone in the drudgery of realizing, oh my goodness, I might have missed out on some key things. I know from the stories from my mom that not only would she say for corporeal punishment, go to the back, that she's going to hit her if being unruly or being a child, essentially. But that, and this just shows how great the times are, hopefully for many people, changing as we learn and we choose love over this sort of punishment, but made her, in emotional, mental sense, complicit in that abuse by saying, you go out to the backyard and choose the stick that I'm going to beat you with. That's mental, emotional, being complicit. Just hit her, for God's sakes. Because then she becomes complicit. Then she becomes this active agent instead of doing like the I am work of self-assessment and saying, what can I do to make sure that I'm not a part of this? Instead, there's on the flip side, it's total opposite side of mind-boggling approach to self-disciplining, because essentially we become our own parents, and hallelujah. I feel so grateful to be, that's the best thing about being an adult, is becoming our own parent.
Mhm.
That guiding hand that we missed. Sand stick. I am equally as guilty for contributing to the mass marketing of it as if it were some disease to rectify, which in the clinical world, post-traumatic stress, add the D on the end, that was formulated in 1980 as it entered the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. Everyone decided and came together that there was going to be a D there, and that this being affected by life essentially is a disorder. Now, yes, can it get to disproportionate levels of disorderliness in one's daily living? Yes. However, it's completely normal to be affected by our life experiences. And then how do we move with that? So there's my contributions with it. There's the big T word and the big T word. 2015, 2021.
We can never beat the human predicament, yet we can overcome the human habit to being addicted to the pain and suffering of our traumas.
There it is.
I agree. I agree with that.
Solution. Life never stops coming. It's how we're approaching this moment that matters most. Rather than how can I make everything better? It's about what's happening right now in this moment.
Both gains and pains, celebrations and sorrows are all part of the deal. Whereas I have always said, no pain, no gain.
1980s aerobics. We're
Yep.
all taking our leotards off, Margo. Slowly but surely. So long as we are here, we all have the inner work to do to help our lives flow a little bit better than they did yesterday. So returning to that sense of ease and efficacy in our lives.
Let's take a look at the identity associations and how they've worked in my own life so far.
So surface identity relates to the external world and our relationship to it, although rarely to never is the totality of who someone is. Simple speak, how we relate to the world by way of our chosen or signed roles and titles.
For example, technically on the surface, at least, I am a high school dropout who earned my GED, but if I had believed that's all I was, then I wouldn't have.
Become a Harvard Faculty Club speaker 15 years later. Gotten admitted into a world-renowned acting school in Manhattan. Being a teacher-endorsed student at the University of British Columbia. Graduating from multiple mediation, conflict resolution, and negotiation courses with the Justice Institute of British Columbia. Graduating from Rhodes College in counseling and coaching in Canada, and Douglas College and the coaching school in New York City, and being a mindful NYU graduate with also Sounds True Publishing. A wonderful, have you heard of Sounds True?
Mm-mm.
Oh, I'm going to send you that link with my yoga link with YouTube. So you could put my videos on the background while you're doing all these changes between the two houses. And it's an activism scholarship awarded, Goddard University graduate, and now Dean's, I received the Dean's Scholarship for the Masters, as you saw. So that's newer. I could add that, but your turn.
Oh, surface identities, bright side and areas for potential alarm, certainty, belonging, the courage to be who we are, or at least what we think we are, self-deception, self-doubt, self-sabotage, restrictive righteousness. Oh, so those are the higher essence, lower essence.
Yeah, so bright side, and I want to like maybe no, maybe I could do something to like that, just maybe something to help it. Where there we go. So that's the bright side, if you will. I'll rework the font color, but yeah.
So for instance, like the three and the Enneagram 3, my higher essence is holy hope. My
Oh,
lower essence is self-deception.
oh, okay. So I was channeling something here because I haven't studied the Enneagram. My family friend was really into it like when I was 18. I
Yeah.
remember sitting on a picnic bench and reading it like for an hour one day to appease him on a bicycling trip where we took our books out of our backpack and sat down and read a little bit. But because there's so many different models for the self to distinguish, like what's the IJ? What's that?
No, that's you're talking about the that Brigham test.
Oh, Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs, yeah. The
Okay.
Enneagram is 9 points of view, worldview, and you're primarily one of them.
Yeah.
But your goal obviously is to be all 9.
Oh,
If you can.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So there's only 5 identity associations in
Gotcha.
the identity association model. And it's more about acknowledging, as you're saying, and from the beginning, that I am all of these points of self-contact. All of this exists within me, all 5 aspects. And that's just what I've come up with so far. But I think it pretty much for this work so far, it seems to do the work. Okay, interwoven identity. So this identity association is when one's pain or grief is attached to a personal incident, experience, or tragedy. And is so defining that the survivor's total way of being is lived from, here's the neutral statement, okay? So it's neither good nor bad. From a reactionary or highly responsive state of mind to external stimuli, as is related. So it can put us on the side of more agency, self-agency, to act in a way that is going to turn the negativities on its head, or from this kind of reactivity space. Okay. And I apologize for the trigger here, but this is an example. I give the definition, an example from my life, and then how it was, as I said, turned around. And it really, anyone presenting this work, if this were to become a more universally embodied framework for many people to present and share, they would insert their own experience. Okay. Do you want me to read this one?
Yeah.
So my first boyfriend, after my experience of rape, said no one could ever love you again. So again, an egregious thing to say, when I think that's more traumatic, the after, than, I mean, it sounds bad to say, but it's, people, when you expect someone to love you and be good to you and you let them into your life personally versus a rapist, which some people do know they're rapists personally, but in this case, I did not. Okay, here we go.
So what you've done now is take the interwoven identity, and this is your story to it. Okay, go ahead. You read your
Yes, so
story.
it's carrying the grief forward. So then, but instead of carrying that grief forward in ways that would hurt me long term, I allowed and encouraged myself to slowly but surely get over those echo effects, if you will, and allow myself to embrace love. Now, thank God, it's oftentimes said that the length of a relationship does not determine the success of a relationship. So in dating, some of these boyfriends were a year, 2 years, 4 years, but so, yeah. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Oh, I'm sorry. My phone's been blowing up, so something's going on, I think, at work.
Oh my. In Ohio.
Oh yeah, I work remotely, Kentucky. Yeah.
Just kidding.
So I mean, yeah, I just, so somebody was calling me, and I pushed the wrong button.
No,
Sorry.
I got you. Oh my goodness. Aren't we lucky to have Margo Grubbs with us? Yes, we are. So the point is that in engaging in our narratives, our life narratives, our narratives grow, they expand, they become complex, multifaceted. That is life if we're living it. We continue to just expand in many different ways, grow our roots in different ways. And a lot of travel has taken me to meet amazing people. One of them, Terry McBride, an amazing person that I got to date in the yoga world. He has many studios in Vancouver. But he also spearheads beautiful artists like Passenger, Let Her Go song, many different artists, and Tegan and Sarah, lots of great artists so he's international, and he, I attracted such great love. Like, he did all these different things these people did for me, like endorsing my books way after, a decade after breaking up, just reaching out and saying, I'd really love it. You own these studios if you would just read this. My ex-boyfriend seeking probably just to keep me busy and at the house, but I turned that on its head. I actually determined where his documentary might be enhanced in dialogue, where as I said, I don't care if this main character in your movie lives or dies. He's so insensitive to the supportive characters that I have no emotional impact if he lives or he dies, and that's a problem. So he called London, had the change, but then he also put me, not only did he seek my, opinion as someone who has a voice and someone who's interested in hearing speak, but went and put my name in the credit to it, and just different things like that. Just amazing openings within myself to being receptive to engaging love in its different forms.
Obviously, with an untrained brain, after the horrid nature of that event, I lived in a reactionary state for quite a bit longer than the momentary visits I now make to reactionary station. For years, I couldn't allow or maintain a physical connection with anyone I liked. And for a decade plus, maintaining an emotional connection felt akin to a life-threatening situation. Eventually, though, gradually over time, I started to allow good people into my life in order to have a chance at dating them.
through engaging the identity association model, and all of that is just one example. But there's an assimilation of self. Essentially, practicing the I am lengthens our response time, responsive time, that responsibility, response time. So that's a pro. Con would be hyper reacting to everything, and it shortens that negative reaction, because essentially the I am is getting the frontal lobe back on, because traumatic life events short circuits and totally shuts down the frontal lobe. So we need a way that is simple enough. And that's why we will get to this part where we will speak to boiling this down. So we have simple speak in the definitions, and then boiling this down personally for you to have a word, as you will see, a definition to connect with each one, so that when you're in a time of feeling mind boggled by something in life, whether it's a spiritual confrontation, a physical confrontation, a sexual confrontation, whatever it is, but that you're able to navigate the world in a way that is going to emphasize your sense of self-agency and wherewithal and ability to supercharge whatever change is needed in that moment. So, yeah, this is yours.
Interwoven identity. The bright side and areas for potential alarm. The possibility to mindfully express versus the loss of self-control if too enmeshed. Chance to practice self-observation and self-tolerance versus feeling of being ashamed. Opportunity to become curious and modify one's go-to ways versus hopelessness, powerlessness, and victimization. So you want to put it.
I'm going to change that. I'm going to put the word versus in and make it one line.
Yeah.
That's super helpful. In the beginning, I had this on 2 different slides, and the Lieutenant Colonel said, slidesmanship. I was like, slidesmanship. Yes, I like this word. And he's like, side by side.
Yeah.
Okay. Impact identity. So this is causes us to lead our lives as a byproduct of how we influence the spaces that we occupy and people in those spaces, as it reflects a positive regard for the self. So simple speak, caring more about what other people think and feel about you than deciding on who you are. That might be the downside. But it could also be life-saving, depending on the environment. If we kind of need to put the onus on external interpretation of self in isolated moments, so long as we have that caring unit, family, friendship, support, inwardly in revisiting the truth of who we are in any given moment, and reinforcing that manifold in the wake of maybe having to quieten in the external world, an aspect of self.
So your follow-up, so what you've done in this PowerPoint is you've taken the impact identity component. So you said there's 5.
Yep.
To each one of them, you've put your own personal take to it. So the script, so it makes sense, just for a tidbit, for reading back and forth is good until you get to the personal impact. Okay. Because there's no connection for the person reading it. That's your personal story.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
But if someone else is going to be a presenter of the theory, they have to write their own personal story to each impact. Okay. Yes. I mean, each identity. Got it.
Yes. Beautiful. Yes. That was a great recap. Awesome. Thank you, Margo.
Okay.
Who is this? This is me? No, this is you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You need to be reading it. That's what I'm saying.
For the first 4 years of my public working life, I was a hostess and waiter. So Virginia, Coastal Grill, you must go. Great caper, lemon caper, salmon. Florida, New York City. So for the first 4 years of my public working life, so 15 to 19, I was a hostess and waiter at fine dining restaurants who over-identified myself as mainly having the ability to carry 5 plates at once. But that's not that that's easy. I can, like, every time I see now someone doing that, I'm like, I always tell them, goodness, it's amazing. and to make sure everyone else was taken care of. So that was my orientation with impact identity as an example from my life. But since then, I've started my own 501c3. I've written and published books and been paid as a writing coach to help others become authors. I've spoken at the Harvard Faculty Club upon invitation in the Sedona Mental Health Coalition. I've trained people in my own approach to yoga that is a registered mark, even though the USPTO rep said it couldn't be done since the word yoga is in it. So that has been turned on its head. Stone and Stone is a great law firm. So is Forward Counsel in Southern California with Andrew Nelson, who we're going to be meeting with tomorrow as a veteran to do the veteran version of this work. Published my first yoga book, Wholly Intimidating Yoga, created by men, for men only originally. Published my first yoga book, Trauma Resolution Training and Trauma Cooperative Yoga, TCY, Take Care of Yourself, for Self and Beyond. This book and other books are endorsed by doctors and more.
So impact identity, the bright side in areas for potential alarm, verve, meaning enthusiasm, versus insecurity and omittance of self. Introspectiveness, uncentered, uprooted from original intent or purpose. Possibility, mindset, sense of interconnectedness versus self-consumed, unoriginal, and inauthentic. Just probably put
I'm gonna need to whittle it down because if I'm gonna do verses, I've got 5 and I have 7. So I'm gonna need to whittle it down to 7 and maybe just find the essence behind these messaging, integrate that into one instead of 2, the 2 of them. For you, Margo, you started talking about did you hear the Vancouver come out? The British part, but also the about comes out every now and then. What speaks to you here as being resonation with possible experience in your own world, and what it might challenge something unthought of before in respect to impact identity, which causes us to lead our lives as a byproduct of how we influence the spaces we occupy. Not a good or bad thing. None of these are good or bad. They're all neutral. It's how we can say, I don't know where I'm at right now. Let me look at these. Where can I find myself? And then far from bad, just how might I reorient myself to my narrative in a way that's going to drive me through this instead of stagnating?
Yeah, I mean, this impact identity has a lot. I mean, this to me plays right into my 3, because my 3 wants to, my persona is very important versus what's really going on inside. So the struggle within myself is always this, because I don't have a really good handle on how to resist the persona versus the inner me, which is pretty much probably part of my life struggle. So it's sort of like in the 3 is also known as a chameleon. I can adapt myself to whatever situation I am in, and just, I mean, I work the room. I when I go to a thing, I call them meet, greet, and grins. I work the room. It's really ingrained in my personality, and it's all,
chameleon and having an impact.
Well, but having an impact, but also knowing that that impact is all about, that's how I get love. Because in the Enneagram basis upon which point of view you are in the world is based upon your motivation for love. How do you get love in your life to make you feel that you're getting loved enough? And that's my motivation as a 3, is I have to do. I have to be the leader. I have to be the person that I'm going to go to the person. I'm that. And that is really difficult when you are trying to meditate or
It's difficult, right, when it comes to these moments of receiving in life.
yeah,
Like you're saying,
yeah,
receiving from self too, because meditation is a receiving of self.
right.
And
So
that's
so
why
that
you meditating is so brilliant, because we get to, as meditators, get to unmask ourselves to ourselves. And that's what matters, because we must function as these chameleons, as you're saying, to be the driving force of change, especially in realms of justice like you do. There must be, I mean, to me, so what if I have to put my hair in a different way, or put makeup on, or not wear, so to be accepted, who cares? Those are just outer expressions of who I am. It's never been who I am. I've dyed my hair purple more than once. I've cut all my hair off shorter than yours more than once. Never felt different as a human being, never expressed differently, just showing up, trying to get to know myself more, and hoping for candid people who want to do the same, that we can grow beyond the stagnation of the shoulds and the would-be's, or even the musts, like
yeah,
compass.
okay,
This
compass identity.
the one's interpretation of, and we were hustling through as guided by one's spirituality, religion, personal beliefs, and informs one's world and experience, and the lens in which one views from.
So now let me ask you a question. So out of the identities, they overlap, right?
Yeah, these are integral parts, integral components of who we all are. We all have beliefs, whether we are an explorer of them or not. We all carry forward our past in either a way that is going to resonate in a life-giving way, or a way that stymies, restricts, limits. We all have to show up in the world as a title or a role in one form or another. Even if it's unhoused, that's still a title or a role. We must all show up. We're here. There's no denying that we have to come into some kind of a package that we justly choose, hopefully. And choosing, that's why people say, well, why would someone choose that? And let's just use that as just a passive example of thinking about someone who is unhoused. That's just one example. But why would someone choose a bad relationship? Why would someone choose to be hidden in their corporate job versus seen for who they are? Why would someone choose that? And that's a horrible question to ask, because the whole identity association model is getting to the root of the fact, and as is TCY, take care of yourself yoga, trauma cooperative yoga in expanded terms. It's about the root, and the root is that self-determination precedes choice. And we determine ourselves based off of our self-findings. And we have self-findings by being a courageous explorer to say, where am I at? I don't know where I'm at. So as Brene Brown says, like, we've got to be willing to approach ourselves. I don't know. I don't know. So can I look at these 5 and go, where am I expressing right now? Or lack thereof? Without negative judgment or negative self-repercussion, remembering, like, taking the stick out of our hand and saying, how can I coach myself or love myself or direct myself, feed myself in the way that needs to be fed, so that I can move through whatever this is and get onto that goal that I put on the map, on my vision board, or on my refrigerator, or in my journal where no one can see it, or whatever. So from my yoga practice, I thought that living as an ascetic was the only way to be pure and humble. I sold my Freelander Land Rover to pay for my official yoga teacher training and lived without a car for 7 years. I even lived in a monastery at one point, but mostly people's garden suites, AKA basements. I love you, Vancouver, Canada.
But I've learned that I cannot identify with the constructs of a world largely uncreated by me and then expected to know who I am or become who I want to be. Now I can identify with that one.
Hallelujah. And that's the emboldening factor of the compass identity, is that we can go, where am I living inside of this personal belief? Where might I expand? Where might I be limited because of an idea that I've taken on? There's so many questions there that are therapeutic to ask oneself, that one can ask with a mental health person. They can ask in self-reflection, self-study, yoga. A lot of yoga classes, facilitations are having practitioners of yoga bring a journal to the mat these days. It can be with a friend who is bold and brave like you, a family member, it could be anything, all of it. I mean, I say I'm a lifer. I've had my counselor for 20 years. No, since I was 18, so 22 years. And I say, gosh, I hope I have it for another 20. Bless your heart. Bless your heart. I cannot overly identify with labels and practices uncreated by me and then expect to fulfill my fullest potential.
As a whole, we cannot identify with and act within roles undreamt by us, and then expect to fill our shoes day in and day out in a way that feels good to us. Yeah.
Since then, I've anchored into my worthiness to live a full life. So remember that I said it in Vancouver, Canada, foregoing all creature comforts, feeling guilty when I have them. Very almost militant. The yogic life, when lived in alignment with the original tenets, is quite stifling for
the sutras.
Right. Well, who lives in, well, look, because I can practice, but I can practice truth and cleanliness, and unattachment. It's the idea that we need to do it in an extremist way, which we hear when we see yogis renouncing all worldly possessions and living in, a hippie factory in the mountains, right?
Yeah.
But since then, but is anchored into my worthiness to live a full life. This is me, or at least what that means to me. So you see, this is a wide sweeping. This is a microcosmic. My story is one little grain of sand. Macrocosmic. What does it mean to anchor into our worthiness to live a full life? If you've had a similar example or life example to couple with navigating the compass identity. So I've allowed myself to be in a deeply committed relationships without feeling ashamed for my attachment to the people I love. It was a thing for me as a yogi. I've leased a nice car that I feel safe in. I've rewarded my life's efforts with nice belongings I feel comfortable and fresh in.
Compass identity, the bright side and areas for potential harm. A feeling and belief in being supported by something bigger versus loss of autonomy or resignation. Faithfulness versus lessened originality due to blind following. Trust in the world, God, universe, you should put divine, versus fear of the unknown due to over idealization. Okay.
Thank you. That was well done. Okay. All right. Fifth and final, transgressional. This identity association is regressed toward in order to, I visit this often. I notice myself. I notice without negative judgment. Judgment is neutral in and of itself. This identity association is regressed toward in order to please a former construct of self, as is related to one's original upbringing or prominent life experiences. Example, after I divorced my first husband, I jumped in to save him when he fell on hard times. I learned that behavior through being a child taking care of my dad. From 8 to 16, my 8 to 16 years of life, that was at the forefront of my care and concern. And in my 30s, it distracted me from my own life. And for a short time, made me feel better about myself because I knew someone I cared about, although it was ultimately not a fit for me for a lifelong partner, needed support he wasn't getting from anywhere else. Ultimately, I lost my brick and mortar business because I was too busy thinking about how I might care for him. No regrets, as Edith Piaf says. Since then, I've moved away to accommodate the fresh start I needed, while asking his family to take over more and providing them with resources to do so. I've rebranded my business, started a new exercise regimes that challenge my mental quickness and alertness while anchoring me in more emotional calm. I've grown my vision for my future and even got invited to advertise my company at all 80 of the Rockies baseball home games. Go Rockies!
Oh, Rocky. Of course, it is essential that we know which identity association it is that we're operating from and why in order for our lives to be best served. Remember, no one identity association is better than the other.
A little bit of impartiality here when approaching oneself with love and compassion and empathy. There are times in my life when I've tried to appease people by resorting to being a previous version of myself, or placated to people's approved versions of me. For example, being a teenager, trying to find myself, while also trying to stay in the mold of what I've already learned fashion magazines says is okay. Or being 29 and mirroring the asceticism I had learned at the beginning of the decade in the yoga monastery I live in. So we see this 15-year-old and this 29-year-old on the left and right. There's the pager.
Transgenerational identity, the bright side and areas for potential harm. Traditional, values-oriented versus complacency. Wanting to make others happy versus self-neglect or cowardice can be easier to fit in self-betrayal. Traditional.
You did it.
Yep.
You did it. I mean, that all, wow. Okay. I love the verses. It makes this so much better to read, and it gives me a new challenge to integrate.
You could say high essence. You could call it higher essence, lower essence if you want, because
well, that's
basically
somebody else's terminology, which is a copyright situation I respect too much. But I could refer to whoever uses those words. But then that creates a hierarchy of self. And the whole thing with the identity association model is that I want to negate said notion that there is such a better version of self than another. So omitting the hierarchy of self, omitting that one part is better than the other. Because are we all complacent at one point or another? Heck yes, if we're human. Do we all tend to neglect ourselves if there's a lot of fires going on and to put out and manage? Yes. Can we feel scared sometimes that might be ultimately, for being honest with ourselves, a bit of cowardly? Yes. So that's where I'm coming from, and this model's coming from. Viewing ourselves from the lens of capable change is essential in the ongoing fight against a negative orientation of self. Ding, 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 ding.
Have your quick word ready. Pick one word that most readily relates to each identity association in your own life. We want to be able to easily reconnect to each.
So remember, the frontal lobe goes offline when we're in an experience that we're overwhelmed in. So we want to create a new sense and feeling of safety by giving ourselves an easier task, which is, okay, so if I have these 5 written down and I printed out in front of me, if I've taken my notes, if I've written these down and acknowledged the site of the source, joestanding.com, then from there, what's a word that to me is connective? So these are mine. This might not be yours. So surface identity. For me, when I really meditated on this, one word for surface identity was relational. Impact identity. One word that embodied impact identity to me is driven. Compass identity, one word that to me encapsulated what compass identity means is connectedness. Interwoven, responsibility. So what am I doing with the material of my life? Am I carrying it forward as impetus to continue to grow, shift, expand, and change, while knowing I'm going to have hiccups, and shortening that time where its reactivity is shortened? Sure, we can tell people what's on our minds, stand up for ourselves in a relational way. Ultimately, it's responsibility on my behalf. Transgressional. So that backward folding to, well, it's safer just to be this version. This is where we get brave and we confront the paradigms that raised us, whether it's an institution we spent a lot of time at or whatever, but transgressional, survival. That was my word. It's not inspirational. It's just a word to me that if I go like, okay, where am I coming from right now? Survival. Okay, let me look at the definition because that goes with transgressional. Let me look at what transgressional means again. Okay, so this is you walking yourself through this as I do. Let's look at this definition. Let's look at the potential areas of alarm and the bright side and find myself with a genuine spirit where I am in present momentness. How can I reorient myself based off of this knowledge I now have?
Come up with your own word, one single word, in order to create a genuine relationship with each one of your personal identity associations. That's good.
Yay!
Makes sense. Yeah.
It is in a reconciliation of self. Whether it's 50 times a day or you're just doing this so much, it's once a month. Everything's just flowing. The inner life is modeling the outer life. Who said this? We need to Google it. But one time I read a quote just saying that happiness is when our outer life mirrors our inner life. That makes so much sense. So I always practice boldness, braveness. It's the best of my ability to say, okay, this is the thought that just went through. I'm going to put it out there and see where it goes. Because at least I have immediate, there's no stuffing, and I'll have immediate feedback of where that other agent of change is, that other co-creator of their own life. Where are they living within this experience? What are they open and receptive to? It is in a reconciliation of self that we transition through necessary stages in our lives with greater ease. You might even say agency and self-stewardship. This is ongoing work.
Complex thinking can be difficult when stressed or feeling under fire. So please make sure you have your own quick word for your I am self process.
Just self-find. You might ask these questions. What's it like to be in this identity association right now? What does this identity association remind me of? What can I make of this situation that best serves me? How may I best serve this situation? Because we're modeling inner and outer lives. So we're thinking about the whole that lives and exists in the macrocosmic outside of our own encasement of flesh and needs and desires and healthy ego. When is it best to take action? Why do I care about the situation that I find myself in? If not this presently identified identity association, which one might liberate me in this moment with this set of circumstances the most? Which one might I draw on?
We can no longer look to all the voices of the world for guidance, for there are too many, and it's drowning out our innate wisdom. Life will not genuinely work for our authentic selves if we become asleep to our own voices. Honest self-assessment is the only way to redeem ourselves during the hiccups of the day.
So this psychological self-assessment tool, thank you, Margo, this is what the identity association model is. As Dale Carnegie said, knowledge is not power. Knowledge applied is power. So this isn't like a fun, ooh, wow, yes, wow, 10 best things I can do to be bold and beautiful and great in my life. No, this is, you are already great and you can be bold and growingly beautiful the more that we self-assess with that courage and put ourselves forward through the ring of fire, as Johnny Cash says.
Wow. So this is all new to me.
Oh, yes.
Except except it has some interwoven information, but this is a real, this is a, maybe not, I don't know if it's easier. I think I'd have to hear it a couple of different times to get it, but it's really good. Joe, this is really good.
I'm really glad. How
I
cool.
really
I
like it.
mean, like, talk about self-integration. I feel very, very proud, healthy pride about where I started in that room with those four reformers, with you and Patsy. And there was Darlene and the dentist, and then there was the, I say, marketing guru. She had brown hair, petite. Because I don't remember Kathy. Do you remember?
Yeah, Kathy started with us, but that was Patsy's brother Pete's wife. But she did it for a while with us. But then her and Pete died. Her brother, the Pete died, and then they had a big falling out. It was ridiculous. You know, you look back, and I was thinking while I was reading some of the text of the last one. It's like I I think self-development and self-exploration is critical to the human condition. And I don't think people do it enough. And I do see, because I think I have a strong faith base, um, that it's really all part and parcel of the divine. And we just don't get it. Us humans just don't get it unless we start looking for it. But if we look for it and we're accepting and trusting, it's going to come. And this is I mean, I had no idea what the hell we were doing today. Just like, okay, whatever she wants to do, we'll do it. But
Thank you.
but your growth is incredible. I mean, I've just watched you over these years, and I just think it's fabulous. And it's been full of struggle.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that,
I
and
mean,
I'm
it's still, there's still all those wakeful challenges. They are
sure.
an integral part of who we are. And and fixing them in some corner and pretending like they're not there is so toxic. And
Yeah.
being transparent with people, even people I've never met before, online or whatever, it's just, to me, it's what snowballs that wakefulness and
Yeah.
allow more doors to open. Otherwise, I get stuck back in 2001, 2003, 2005. I mean, all
Oh,
the years
yeah.
of my greatest life challenges, I keep going. It's just, but when we like being, renouncing a lot of the creature comforts as an aesthetic, as I referred to, had its pluses for sure. In that my impetus was, how can I whittle down or refine, like, if I remove all the extra stuff that I was basing my personal identity on, what do I have to move with? And essentially it's the inner components of, well, that's always going to be there. That's not going anywhere. So good luck
Right.
trying to get it to get it to go, for anyone hoping that this will just, whatever is at the forefront of one's own mind is going to just kind of disintegrate in time. No, 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 no. Time is an illusion, as Einstein said.
Mhm. Well,
Right.
and one of the things that I have learned, like, it's kind of odd that it took all of these years and all this struggle and all this pain and suffering and stuff to to see that the way you present in this world, other people are really your great supporters. I mean, I could not believe in the last couple of years this response that people just really do think that I'm something. And you know, it's it's that trying to be what they see, but I obviously am, or that's not how they would see me. Does that make sense? Yeah, yeah. And it's sort of like, oh wow, I guess I have done a few things. So it's like at this
I
point,
mean,
I'm
we are
I'm like,
many things, right? to
Many
play
things.
devil's advocate, like your middle thing, and some things are just, I'm just not stomachable.
But let me just tell you this. I'm not the best caregiver in the world. My partner is 83. She's very deteriorated, and I am not good at compassion. Compassion and empathy is not my, and patience are not my strong suits. And
Is it
I
because you feel like you're not good at being a caretaker? So every time the need for care comes up, there's this self-confrontation of like, I'm not good at this. So, ugh! And then the frustration.
maybe it may be that. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, mechanically, like I said, with my mother, was very good. I mean, we were
Right.
fed, we were healthy, we were disciplined. I mean, all of the things. So it's like I'm going to work
Lucky
on that.
you. Lucky you. My dad was the stay-at-home mom. So I feel in the graces of nurturance, usually around my male counterparts.
Yeah, and see, and he was old too.
So that's my work. That's been my work, is
Yeah,
feminine.
yeah.
Yeah, he was old. So he was like a really cool dad, grandfather, mother.
Yeah, yeah. And what happens is it's like as we struggle, as we accept these concepts and we can see ourselves in the concepts and how they plug in, and then open it up for the energy, the energies, positive energies of the world. That's where I try not to let people suck my energy anymore. I didn't realize what that even meant, but boy,
Yeah.
they will just take it all from you, and you've got to
Yes.
reserve your being.
That's where impact identity can have its falling out, is if my self-worth and identity is so contingent on my impact on others and how others' perception is of me, that's the falling out of impact. But there's also the part of, wow, I can see the smile on that person's face because I did XYZ. I feel great about this. And I can somehow shape a part of my self-awareness around my ability to be and live and function in this way.
Right.
At the end of the military version, we say, we, meaning the people, I've done this landing of this interactive flow of the material here on Zoom. It sounds true, publishing. Tammy Simon started it when she was, I think, 22. And she is an amazing spearheader of evolution, human development. And she just actually moved to Vancouver, Canada with her partner, is what she speaks about on her podcast at sometimes. But she's interviewed like, like Goldie Hawn did something with her. And a lot of like Peter Levine, a lot of the self-mending oriented leaders. So one of the people that I heard an interview with her was Bodhi Paksa, Living as a River is the name of the podcast. And it says, here, there is not a thing, a bad person, stupid person, or whatever. Here, there's not a thing. There's a process. There's a process. It's like you said, finding ourselves in that concept or finding ourselves in it, and then that takes the edge off because they're all neutral. So I am bowing to you and your recognition of kind of where this fits into that self-exploration path of doing the self-work.
Wow. I appreciate it. So you're going to send me some stuff, girl.
I am.